biggest excuse people give when it comes to learning a language is that I just don't have the time. That's a lie, that's bullcrap, and you know it. And here, I'm gonna break it down and talk about why that's a lie. So, what you don't really have is not a lack of time, but a lack of consistency, right? There are so many ways throughout the day in which we waste time. From hopping on social media, watching TV mindlessly, or even just doing normal everyday things that can also be taken advantage of to study and get a little bit of practice in. Maybe like cooking or driving to work, right? There's so many ways in which we waste time. I'm going to tell you about the way I have wasted time today, so you can see an example and how we can fix that, right? You don't need to sit there and study for an hour or 2 hours a day in order to make progress in a language. In fact, I think that's a terrible way to do it because your brain just gets overloaded and you forget most things after about half an hour. What you need is 15 to 20 minutes every single day set aside in order to speak Spanish. I personally don't go probably more than 30 to 45 minutes of learning a language, and that's a language that I already kind of know, right? If it's a language I don't know as well, I'm going to probably do 15 to 25 minutes, right? Because I don't need that much time. I want to get in, look at one grammar thing, a little bit of vocab, do some reading, do some exercises, and get out, right? Before my brain overloads and I just start forgetting things and not remembering. So let's talk about the ways I've wasted time today and what I could have done instead to study the language. First thing this morning, after I got back surfing, I went for a run, but I stopped for a coffee at a local coffee shop, right? And I didn't bring anything to study. I didn't pull out an app, I didn't bring a book. There's so many things I could have done. I could have sat there on LinkedIn and studied, I could have sat there and read a book, I could have listened to music, I could have listened to a podcast. There's so many ways in which I could have studied, even languages that I don't speak as well as Spanish. Another thing I sat there and did was watch TV, which I watch TV in English, right? And there's a couple things we could do here. One, we could put the subtitles on. That would be a great option, just so you're getting a little bit of reading practice. Or two, I could have found a TV show or a movie that I like in Spanish and watch it in Spanish, right? Especially if you have a VPN, you can switch the VPN to Mexico or Colombia or wherever, and it's all going to have all your favorite movies dubbed into Spanish so that everybody can enjoy them and you can watch them. Watching movies or reading books that you have already seen or read is a great way to practice because then you can focus on the words and structure and you don't have to worry about like, am I understanding the plot? Because I've seen the movie 1,000 times or I read the book 1,000 times, and so I don't need to do that. I already know what is going on. Another way in which I waste time is social media, mindlessly scrolling Instagram or TikTok or YouTube, right? Instead, I could have taken that time and put up an app like LinkedIn and sat there and studied for 5 minutes. Maybe I pull out some flashcards and study for 5 minutes, right? Instead of scrolling. Another way is just cooking food, right? Instead of just cooking food and watching YouTube, I could have watched a YouTube video in Spanish, or I could have listened to music, or I could have listened to a lesson on YouTube, right? Take advantage of that downtime. Same thing with when you're driving to work. Put on an audiobook, put on a podcast, put on some music even, right? And you don't even have to understand every word. Maybe you pick up 4 words of the entire song. But the point is you're getting your ear used to hearing the language. Another way I waste time, not today, but most days, is sleeping on a little too long, right? Hit the snooze button, and I waste an extra half an hour or an hour that I could have gotten up, gone for a walk, and thrown on my headphones and listened to a podcast, or listened to a lesson, or listen to some kind of a vocab list, right? There's so many options, you just gotta take advantage of the tool. And the last way in which I wasted time today was sitting there and eating food and not taking advantage of that. Again, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. It could be a movie, it could be a TV show, it could be a song, podcast, audiobook, whatever you want, right? But instead of just sitting there and staring off into space, unless you need that time for yourself, right? Or watching something in English, watch something in Spanish. Right? At the end of the day, what you have is a consistency problem, not a time problem. Language learning is a process of absorbing the language, not memorizing. This isn't a chemistry test. We don't want to memorize things and study for the test and then 10 minutes later forget it. We want to allow it to slowly absorb into us and become a part of who we are, right? And so in order to do that, you want light, frequent touches, not less frequent, more, longer, or in-depth touches of the language. It's better to study 15 minutes every day than it is to study twice a week for an hour, right? Even though that's more time in total, right? You're going to get more out of studying for 15 minutes each day than you are studying for an hour twice a week. You're also getting more review, you're getting more touches with the language. So, how to solve this? How to solve this time, which is really a consistency problem, right? What you're going to do is, one, you're going to take light frequent touches, right? 15 to 20 minutes instead of an hour-long study session, right? Hour-long study sessions don't do any good for anybody after about 30 to 45 minutes, right? The other thing you're going to do is schedule your time. Time that you haven't scheduled is time that you're going to end up wasting, right? I, for example, schedule 30 minutes every day in order to set aside time to study a language, right? And maybe there are some days that I don't do it, but having the notification pop up from Google on my phone reminds me that, darn, I need to go study, right? And even if I don't do it every day, well, I'm doing it much more frequently and much more consistently, having it scheduled and having a time set aside. Sometimes things come up and you're not able to make it, but having that time set aside and the reminder leads to better adherence to the study plan. So here's some ideas of how you can be more efficient, take advantage of your downtime to study language. First off, optimize your phone for language learning. Put Quizlet, put LinkQ, put a YouTube playlist in Spanish as the first things you see on your page, right? Hide away those social media apps, hide away the email, make it a little bit harder to access so that your brain, looking for the easiest route, goes towards those apps and not towards social media. Another thing you do is sticky note your house. I'm a big fan of this, of going around my house in the language I'm learning and putting little sticky notes up everywhere, right? So that, one, I'm seeing them all the time, so I'm going to learn the language just through absorbing it. And two, I'm learning lots of common, really useful words. And three, it's like studying without actually studying, because it's not like you're going to sit there and be like, okay, I'm in my kitchen, I'm going to sit here and look at all these things I've got sticky notes everywhere. No? But as you go about your day, you're going to see those sticky notes, and you're going to get some language exposure. Another thing you can do is have a curated list of songs on Spotify in Spanish that you really like, so that when you're bored, when you're at the gym, when you have some time, you can put that music on in the background and hear it and be exposed to listening to Spanish. This is what happens with babies when they learn Spanish, or English, or any other language, right? They don't speak for the first 2 years of their life, but they're getting constant input, right? They're getting used to hearing the language. And the good news is we don't have to wait 2 years to be able to speak. We can do it in 3 months, 4 months if we really want to, right? But you need that input, you need that audio upscale. Another thing you can do is just review flashcards. Reviewing flashcards and picking up vocab is the best thing. It's the number one thing you can do to improve your Spanish, right? You can get away with some mistakes on gender. You can get away with some mistakes on your conjugations. But if you don't have the words to talk about what you want to talk about, you can't have a conversation. And the last thing you can do as a short little activity to help you learn a little bit more Spanish is put on a podcast, put on the radio, or put on, if you're a little bit more advanced, an audiobook as you have a little bit of downtime. Whether you're cooking, whether you're driving to work, whether you're sitting there and eating food, right? Even if you're at the gym, you would do this, right? It's a great way to practice. There's so many amazing tools, right? You don't have a lack of time. And I would challenge you to look at your phone and see how much time you wasted today. I think I spent 4 hours on my phone today. And that's not even to count the time I spent messing around on my computer, right? So quit making excuses. You have more time than you would like. What you need to do is get consistent, schedule your time, and really make learning a language a priority if you want to make progress. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you like this video, like, subscribe, all that jazz. If you want to learn more about classes, be sure to comment below classes. And any questions you may have, I'm more than happy to answer them. Leave them down below. See you guys in the next one.